Marcus Johnson never thought trouble would come knocking at his door. At 27, he lived a life most people in his neighborhood would call simple, almost boring. He woke up every morning before the sun touched the cracked sidewalks of his block in Southside Chicago. His job at a small auto repair shop paid just enough to keep his rent current and his fridge half-stocked. He had dreams, big ones, but they were hidden behind the grease stains on his hands and the exhaustion that clung to his shoulders. Marcus wasn't flashy. He didn't wear gold chains or brag about hustling. His world was quiet, working at the shop, attending church on Sundays with his mother, and shooting hoops at the park with his younger cousin, Jamal. People in the neighborhood respected him for staying out of trouble when so many of his peers had slipped into gangs, drugs, or prison cells. His mother, Patricia Johnson, a nurse who had worked double shifts for years, often reminded him, "Marcus, you may not have much, but you have your freedom. Don't ever take that for granted." He would nod, grateful for her sacrifices, proud of her strength. She had raised him and his sister Tanya alone since their father walked out. That Friday evening started like any other. Marcus closed up the repair shop around 6:30, wiped the oil from his hands, and stuffed his rag into his back pocket. His boss, Mr. Harris, an older black man who had taken him under his wing, patted his shoulder. "Good work this week, son. Go enjoy your weekend." Marcus smiled, thinking about grabbing dinner with Tanya later. She had just gotten a promotion at her office job and wanted to celebrate. Life wasn't perfect, but in that moment, it felt steady. He walked through the streets humming to himself, greeting neighbors who sat on their porches. As he reached the corner store, Marcus paused. 2 police cars sped past, sirens blaring, heading in the direction of a bank just 3 blocks away. He shook his head, muttering, "Another robbery? This city never rests." He bought a soda and chips, then continued home, unaware that the events of that night would soon flip his life upside down. By the time Marcus reached his small apartment, Tanya was already waiting, sitting cross-legged on the couch with Chinese takeout spread on the table. She grinned. "About time you showed up. I was about to eat everything." They laughed, clinking soda cans in a toast. For that brief hour, Marcus felt light-hearted. They ate, joked about childhood memories, and talked about dreams, how Tanya wanted to buy a house for their mom, how Marcus hoped to open his own auto shop one day. But at 9:15 p.m., everything changed. There was a knock at the door. A hard, urgent pounding. Marcus frowned, wondering who it could be at that hour. He opened the door, and in stormed 2 police officers, guns drawn, faces hard. "Marcus Johnson," one barked. "Yes," Marcus said slowly, confusion knitting his brow. "You're under arrest for armed robbery and assault." Marcus froze. "What?" "That's a mistake. I just got home from work." "I don't know what you're talking about." Before he could react further, the officers shoved him against the wall, cuffed his wrists, and began reading his rights. Tanya screamed, "He didn't do anything. You've got the wrong man." But the officers ignored her cries. As they dragged Marcus out of the apartment, neighbors peeked through curtains and cracked doors, whispering. His mother, arriving from her shift, dropped her purse in shock as she saw her son shoved into the back of a police car. "Marcus!" she cried, tears streaming down her face. Marcus sat in the back seat, heart pounding, mind racing. He replayed the last few hours in his head, work, dinner, laughter. None of it made sense. How could they think he robbed a bank? He whispered to himself, "God, please don't let this be real." But it was real. His ordinary life had just shattered, and the nightmare had only begun. The station smelled of sweat, metal, and despair. Marcus sat in a cold interrogation room, the cuffs still cutting into his wrists. He replayed the officer's words, armed robbery and assault. His head throbbed with disbelief. Detective Riley, a white man with tired eyes, entered holding a file. He tossed it onto the table and leaned forward. Marcus Johnson, you were seen fleeing the scene of the robbery at Chicago First Bank. A witness identified you. You want to explain that? Marcus shook his head. I was at work until 6:30, then I went home. My sister was with me. You can ask her. Riley smirked. Your sister's family. Of course she'll cover for you. I didn't do this. Marcus insisted, slamming his cuffed hands against the table. His voice cracked with desperation. Check the shop cameras. Ask my boss. I wasn't anywhere near that bank. But Riley wasn't listening. He slid a photo across the table. It was a blurry still from a street camera, a tall black man running near the bank, a cap pulled low. The resemblance was vague, but the detective's mind was already made up. Marcus's stomach dropped. That's not me. You can't even see the face. Tell it to the judge, Riley said coldly. The next morning, Marcus was arraigned in court. His mother sat trembling in the back, Tanya gripping her hand. The judge denied bail, citing the seriousness of the charges. Marcus was led away in shackles, his eyes meeting his mother's one last time before the cell door swallowed him. The jail was a world Marcus had never known. The clang of metal gates, the shouts of inmates, the constant tension, it pressed on him like a heavy weight. Nights were the hardest. He lay on the thin mattress, staring at the ceiling, whispering prayers. God, you know I didn't do this. Please, show them the truth. Months later, the trial began. The prosecutor painted Marcus as a desperate young man who wanted quick money. The witness, a nervous store clerk, pointed at him in court. That's him. I saw him run past. Marcus's lawyer, an overworked public defender, tried to fight. The footage is unclear. The timeline doesn't match. But his arguments were drowned under the weight of bias. Marcus took the stand, his voice steady but broken inside. I didn't rob that bank. I've worked hard my whole life to stay out of trouble. Please believe me. But the jury didn't. Within hours, they returned with a guilty verdict. Marcus felt the world crumble as the judge sentenced him to 15 years in prison. His mother sobbed loudly in the gallery. Prison life hardened Marcus. Every day was a battle, against fear, against loneliness, against the anger boiling inside him. Some inmates mocked him for claiming innocence. Others respected his quiet strength. He wrote letters to Tanya and his mother. Sometimes they came to visit, their eyes filled with hope and pain. Hold on, Marcus, his mother would say, pressing her palm against the glass. God's not finished with you yet. But nights were still long, and hope felt like a candle burning low. Not everyone stood by him. Some cousins whispered that maybe he really was guilty. Old friends stopped visiting. Even in the neighborhood, his name became tied to shame. Tanya fought back, defending him fiercely, but the rumors spread. One day, Marcus received a letter from his childhood friend, Darren. It was short, cold. Man, I can't be associated with you anymore. People talking. I gotta protect myself. Marcus clenched the paper, tears stinging his eyes. Even my friends don't believe me. Years passed. Marcus kept his head down, reading books in the library, joining the prison choir, mentoring younger inmates. But loneliness remained his shadow. Birthdays, holidays, family gatherings, all passed without him. Sometimes he would sit in the yard, watching birds fly overhead, wondering if freedom would ever be his again. Then came the breakthrough. A new lawyer, Angela Carter, a sharp black attorney working with an innocence project, took interest in his case. She visited Marcus one hot July afternoon, her eyes blazing with determination. Marcus, I believe you, she said. I've looked at the evidence. It's weak. The witness statement is shaky. The video is unclear. And guess what? Another robbery last month was carried out by a man with the same build, wearing the same cap. But he got caught, and his fingerprints match the ones from your case. Marcus's heart pounded. Are you saying? Angela smiled. I'm saying we're going to fight. And this time, we're going to win. The retrial was grueling, but Angela dismantled the case piece by piece. She presented the fingerprints, the confession of the real culprit, a man named Leon Matthews, and the flimsy witness identification. When the jury returned, Marcus held his breath. Not guilty. The words echoed in his ears like music. Tears rolled down his face as Tanya and his mother cried out in relief. After 7 years behind bars, Marcus was finally free. Freedom was sweet, but it came with scars. Marcus walked through the neighborhood, noticing how people stared. Some apologized for doubting him, others avoided his gaze. He had lost years, friends, and opportunities, but not his soul. With Angela's help, he sued the city for wrongful conviction. The settlement allowed him to open his own auto repair shop, just like he had once dreamed. But beyond money, Marcus used his voice to speak to young men in schools and churches about injustice, resilience, and never giving up hope. At the shop's grand opening, his mother hugged him tightly. I told you, son. God wasn't finished with you. Marcus smiled, looking at the sign above the door, Johnson Auto Repair. I was punished for a crime I did not commit, he said softly, but I refuse to let that be the end of my story. And with that, Marcus stepped into a new life, scarred but unbroken, determined to make every second of his freedom count. The first morning Marcus woke up in his own bed after 7 long years behind bars felt strange. He lay there staring at the ceiling, waiting for the sound of metal gates clanging open or a guard barking orders. But all he heard was the faint hum of traffic outside and the soft clatter of his mother moving around in the kitchen. Freedom felt unreal, like a dream that might dissolve if he moved too quickly. He sat up slowly, his muscles tense. His old room looked almost the same as when he left. The faded posters of basketball players, the cracked dresser, the worn Bible his mother had placed by the nightstand. Yet it felt smaller somehow, like the walls had shifted closer. The years of prison had changed him, reshaping his sense of space and time. Marcus, his mother's voice called. Breakfast's ready. When he walked into the kitchen, the smell of grits and eggs filled the air. Patricia smiled warmly, though her eyes carried the weight of everything they'd endured. She kissed his cheek, holding him a moment longer than usual. You don't know how many mornings I prayed to see you sitting at this table again, she whispered. Marcus forced a smile. Feels good to be home, Ma. But deep inside, he felt a storm. He tried to eat, but every bite turned heavy in his throat. Prison had taught him to eat quickly, never letting his guard down. Now, in the comfort of home, he found himself glancing at the window, half expecting an officer to burst in and drag him away again. Later that day, Tanya drove him through the neighborhood. Marcus pressed his forehead against the window, seeing familiar streets but through unfamiliar eyes. The corner store where he used to buy sodas, the park where he played ball, all still there, yet everything felt different. Some faces lit up when they saw him, offering cautious smiles. Others turned away, whispers trailing after him. That's him, Marcus overheard one woman say to her friend. The one who robbed the bank. Well, they say he didn't, but, her voice faded as they walked off, shaking their heads. Marcus's chest tightened. No matter what that judge said, people still see me as guilty. Tanya reached over, squeezing his shoulder. Let them talk. You don't owe them nothing. You survived what most men couldn't. Now you gotta live. But living wasn't simple. Every step Marcus took felt heavy. The world had moved forward without him. Technology, slang, even the music had changed. He didn't know how to fit in anymore. That evening, as he lay in bed, the silence pressed on him again. Prison had been loud, but in that noise, he had learned how to survive. Now, in freedom, he had to learn how to truly live again, and that terrified him more than the cell ever did. Marcus soon realized that freedom came with shadows. Every corner of his neighborhood seemed haunted by whispers. Every handshake carried hesitation. The old barber shop where he once joked with friends went silent when he walked in. Conversations stalled, eyes darted, and someone muttered, "That's the jailbird." Even children stared. One afternoon, while Marcus was walking home, a little boy tugged at his mother's dress and asked loudly, "Mama, is that the man who robbed the bank?" The mother hushed him quickly, pulling him away, but the words stung Marcus like fresh wounds. At night, he dreamed of prison. He woke drenched in sweat, hearing phantom shouts and clanging doors. Freedom was supposed to bring peace, but instead, it dragged the ghosts of his past everywhere he went. The hardest moment came when he ran into Darren, his old best friend, the one who had written him off in prison. Darren leaned against a corner store, gold chain glinting, laughter spilling from his lips as he joked with others. When his eyes met Marcus's, the smile froze. "Well, well," Darren drawled. "Look who's back." Marcus's fists clenched. "Back? You mean free. Something you never believed in." Darren shrugged. "Man, I had to protect my name. You can't blame me for not wanting to be dragged into your mess." "My mess?" Marcus's voice rose, raw with pain. "I lost 7 years of my life because no one stood up for me, not even you." Darren's smirk faltered. He looked away. "It ain't personal. It's survival." Marcus turned and walked off, his heart pounding. Survival, that was all anyone cared about. But what about loyalty? What about truth? The ghosts of betrayal weighed heavier than chains. Patricia Johnson became Marcus's anchor. Every time the world turned cold, her arms opened wide. She reminded him of his worth, even when he doubted himself. One evening, Marcus slumped at the kitchen table, head buried in his hands. "Ma, I don't know how to do this. Everyone still looks at me like I'm guilty. Like I'm nothing." Patricia placed her wrinkled hand over his. "Son, you survived prison with your soul intact. That's something many can't say. You are not nothing. You are my child, and you are a man of God." Marcus's eyes welled up. "But I can't live on that alone. I need a future." Patricia stood, moving to the counter. She pulled out an envelope, sliding it across the table. Inside were bills, carefully stacked. "Ma, what's this?" "Every month, I saved a little from my nursing shifts. I didn't know if you'd come home, but I hoped. Use it to start something new. Don't let what they took from you be the end." Marcus clutched the envelope, speechless. His mother's sacrifices cut deep, her tired hands, her sleepless nights, all poured into that small stack of money. He whispered, "I'll make you proud, Ma. I swear." Tanya had carried her own burdens during Marcus's imprisonment. One night, she confessed the weight she had borne. "You know, I almost dropped out of school," she said quietly as they walked by the lakefront. "The stress of defending you, the whispers at work. I almost couldn't take it." Marcus frowned. "Tanya, I didn't know." "Of course you didn't. I didn't want you to. I wanted you to focus on surviving in there. But I fought every day, against people who said you were guilty, against my own doubts when the nights got too long." Her eyes shone with tears. "I lost friends too. I lost relationships because nobody wanted to be tied to the sister of a criminal." Marcus's throat tightened. He grabbed her hand. "I'm sorry. You shouldn't have had to pay for my pain." Tanya shook her head firmly. "You weren't guilty, Marcus. But injustice spreads. It punishes not just the accused, but everyone who loves them. Now we build back together." With his mother's savings and Angela Carter's guidance, Marcus began working on his dream, Johnson Auto Repair. The road wasn't smooth. Landlords turned him away when they heard his record, even though he was cleared. Banks refused him loans. High risk, they said. Not reliable. But Marcus refused to quit. He found an old garage on the edge of town, its roof leaking, paint peeling. With Tanya's help and a few loyal friends, he scrubbed, painted, and repaired until it looked like a real business. On opening day, only a handful of customers came. Some eyed him suspiciously, whispering. But one elderly man, Mr. Jefferson, brought his rusty car and said, "Son, I believe in second chances. Fix her up." Marcus worked with steady hands, pouring his soul into every bolt and wire. Slowly, word spread. Marcus was good, honest, and fair. His reputation began to shift, one car at a time. Meanwhile, Angela pressed forward with a wrongful conviction lawsuit. The courtroom once again became Marcus's battleground. This time, he sat taller, no longer a victim but a fighter demanding justice. The city's lawyers tried to minimize his pain. He was incarcerated, yes, but he received food, shelter. Angela cut in sharply. Food and shelter? He lost 7 years of his life. 7 years with his family. 7 years of freedom. You cannot reduce that to food and shelter. Marcus listened, heart swelling. For the first time, someone was speaking for him with full fire. The lawsuit dragged for months, but Marcus stayed patient. When the settlement finally came, it wasn't just money, it was vindication. The city admitted its failure. Marcus walked out of that courthouse with a check in hand, but more importantly, his head held high. At the shop, Marcus met Nicole, a young teacher who brought in her old car. She was curious, gentle, and unlike others, she didn't look at him with suspicion. Over weeks, their conversations grew. Nicole asked about his time inside, not with judgment but with compassion. "How did you hold on?" she once asked. "By believing the truth would come out someday," Marcus admitted. Nicole smiled softly. "That kind of faith is rare. I like that about you." Love bloomed slowly, carefully. Marcus was afraid of opening his heart, but Nicole's warmth melted his defenses. For the first time in years, he allowed himself to dream not just of survival, but of companionship. Then Darren returned, this time with guilt heavy in his eyes. He confessed one night at the shop. "Marcus, I knew something back then. The guy who set you up, Leon, he came to me first. He wanted me in on the robbery. I said no, but I didn't warn you. I was scared. And when you got arrested, I stayed quiet." Marcus froze, rage boiling. "You mean to tell me you could have saved me from prison?" Darren nodded shamefully. "I was a coward. I let you suffer." Marcus's fists shook. He wanted to hit him, to scream. But instead, he turned away, voice cold. "You betrayed me worse than the system. I don't know if I can forgive that." Despite his pain, Marcus poured his energy into helping others. He started a youth mentorship program at his shop, teaching boys about cars and life. "Don't let the streets write your story," he told them. "I know what it's like to be punished for something you didn't do. Don't even give them a chance to accuse you." The program grew, earning respect across the neighborhood. Parents brought their sons, grateful for Marcus's guidance. For the first time, Marcus felt his scars turning into strength, not just for himself, but for others. Years after his release, Marcus stood outside Johnson Auto Repair, watching the sunset paint the sky gold. His mother was retired now, resting peacefully. Tanya had bought her dream house. Nicole stood beside him, her hand in his, their love steady and true. The ghosts still whispered sometimes, but they no longer controlled him. Marcus had rebuilt, piece by piece, turning pain into purpose. He looked at the shop sign, then at the young men inside laughing as they worked on a car. His chest swelled with pride. "I was punished for a crime I did not commit," he murmured. "But that punishment didn't destroy me. It shaped me." And with that, Marcus finally stepped fully into his new beginning, free, whole, and unbroken. Marcus's life was moving forward, but inside, storms still raged. Even with Nicole's love and the success of his shop, nights often brought flashbacks. He'd wake in cold sweats, hearing the clang of prison gates or the jeers of inmates. Nicole would reach over, holding him. "You're safe," she whispered. But safety was something Marcus struggled to believe in. One evening, he sat outside alone, staring at the dark sky. Tanya joined him, handing him a mug of tea. "You still fighting inside, huh?" she asked gently. Marcus nodded. "Sometimes I feel free, other times I feel like I'm still locked up. Like I'll never outrun it." Tanya leaned against him. "You might not outrun it, but you can outlive it. That's what you're doing every day." Her words struck deep. For the first time, Marcus began to see that healing wasn't about erasing scars. It was about living with them and still choosing joy. Not everyone welcomed Marcus's rising success. Some men in the neighborhood resented his influence on the youth. One afternoon, his shop door was spray-painted with the words, "Jailbird Fraud." Marcus stared at it in silence, anger burning. Nicole touched his shoulder. "Don't let them drag you back down." Instead of rage, Marcus chose resilience. He gathered the kids from his mentorship program, handed them brushes and paint, and together they scrubbed and repainted the shop wall. "This," Marcus told them, "is how you fight hate, with work, with community, with pride." The act bonded them, turning an attack into a lesson of strength. Though Nicole loved Marcus, she sometimes feared his past would always follow them. One night over dinner, she admitted, "Marcus, I want a future with you, but sometimes I wonder, will people ever see you as more than a man who went to prison?" Marcus's chest tightened. "Do you see me that way?" "No," she whispered quickly. "But the world does. And I worry what that means for us." He reached across the table, taking her hand. "Then we'll keep proving them wrong, together. I can't change the past, but I can shape what comes next." Nicole's eyes softened, tears welling. "Then let's shape it." Angela Carter invited Marcus to speak at a community forum about wrongful convictions. Nervous but determined, Marcus stood before the crowd. "I lost 7 years for something I didn't do," he began. "But I gained something too. I learned the system is broken. I learned silence is deadly. And I learned that our stories matter. So I'll keep telling mine, so no other young man has to live my nightmare." The crowd rose in applause. Marcus realized his voice carried weight, not just in his neighborhood but far beyond. Years of love and healing led Marcus and Nicole to the altar. Surrounded by family, friends, and the youth he mentored, he stood proudly as Nicole walked down the aisle. His mother wept with joy, Tanya beamed, and Marcus whispered his vows with trembling voice. "I was once broken, but you made me whole. I promise to love you, not as a man chained to his past, but as a man free to build our future." Their kiss sealed more than a marriage. It sealed Marcus's transformation from victim to victor. Nicole and Marcus soon welcomed a baby boy, Isaiah. Holding his son for the first time, Marcus's tears fell freely. "You'll never know the pain I knew," he whispered. "I'll fight every day to make sure of that." Fatherhood reshaped him. Nights once haunted by prison dreams were now filled with Isaiah's cries. Where once there had been fear, now there was purpose. Just when life seemed steady, Leon Matthews, the real culprit whose confession freed Marcus, was released from prison. Rumors spread that he was back in the neighborhood. Marcus's heart pounded when he saw Leon one night, leaning against a liquor store wall. Leon smirked. "Looks like you're doing good for yourself. Sorry about those years, man. Wrong place, wrong time, you know how it is." Marcus's fists shook, rage bubbling. But instead of violence, he walked away, whispering, "You'll answer to God, not me." It was the hardest step he ever took, but it was also the most powerful. Marcus expanded his mentorship program, creating a foundation for youth at risk of incarceration. He partnered with schools, churches, and even law enforcement reform groups. Newspapers began writing about him, no longer as the man wrongly convicted, but as the man changing lives. When Isaiah grew older, Marcus told him, "Your daddy went through hell, but he came out stronger. And everything I do now, I do for you, and for every child who deserves a chance." One evening, Marcus visited the same courtroom where he had once been sentenced. This time, he was invited to speak to law students about justice reform. Standing at the podium, he gazed at the empty jury box and whispered to himself, "I was broken here, but I'm standing here now." The lecture ended with a standing ovation. Marcus knew then, his story was no longer about punishment. It was about redemption. On his 50th birthday, Marcus gathered with his family, friends, and community at his shop. Isaiah, now a grown man, handed him a framed picture, Marcus smiling with his mentorship group, with the words beneath, "From prison to purpose." Tears filled Marcus's eyes. He looked around the room, his mother, now frail but still proud, Tanya, strong as ever, Nicole, his partner through storms, Isaiah, his legacy. Raising his glass, Marcus said, "They punished me for a crime I did not commit. But life is not about what was taken from you, it's about what you build after. And I built this: family, love, purpose, and freedom. That is my redemption." The crowd erupted in cheers. Marcus stood tall, scars and all, finally at peace. His story had come full circle, not as a man broken by injustice, but as a man who turned pain into power and punishment into purpose.